Hi, I'm Chris,
And I'm Eli.
and we are the Landlord Gurus. We've been managing our own rental property for decades now, and we've created this show to share our experiences, tips, and best practices we've refined over the years. Thanks for joining us, whether you found us on YouTube or our podcast or at landlordgurus.com. Before we get started, just a reminder to like, share, and subscribe so you'll get notified when we put out new content.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eli, and this is Chris. We're Landlord Gurus. Thanks for joining us for another episode, whether you're following us on YouTube or on one of your favorite places to listen to a podcast. We appreciate you being here. And today what we're going to do is chat a little bit about the process of taking over a rental. So whether that's a property that you are purchasing or one that you're taking over the management for or somebody else, those are different processes, but there's a lot of overlap. And we just wanted to talk through the things that you need to kind of make sure you're thinking about when you're doing that. So Chris is going through this actually on both fronts right now, transitioning, I think, slowly into management of a multifamily, and then also in the midst of purchasing a single family, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Doing a couple things right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the first one is, it's a property that is currently being managed by a property management company. And the owners, these are family members, they were informed by the property manager, actually, that the management company was leaving the area. And so we were going to have to take over the property ourselves or go find a new management company. So we decided, let's just try and do it ourselves and manage this place. It's a 15-unit building. It's already got, tenants in every unit. Some have been there for a long time. So it's kind of jumping in midway to, already existing relationships, I guess, with all the different tenants and existing processes that we may have to change and existing systems that we're probably going to have to change in terms of property management software and rent collection software.
What about relationships and vendors and
Yeah, exactly. Maintenance. So, as we've been kind of transitioning, and I haven't taken over full management yet, but I've been thinking about all the things that kind of need to happen so that when we do start taking it over kind of on day one, or even leading up to day one, what do we need to inform all the tenants about? What, and like you said, what other relationships and vendors and things like that need to be lined up in advance?
So what are some of the
sort of the laundry list of things? Yeah.
What are the really key ones that you're thinking of right now as like the things you have to nail down and get right off the bat,
Right.
in this, to be successful, from the get-go?
Yeah. So kind of the things that I've jotted down so far are, first thing is setting up a bank account, a new bank account. Because, previously that was all the rent and everything and payments were going in and out of a bank account managed by the property manager of the property management company. So yeah, new bank account. That's got to get set up in the owner's name.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to set up a new property management software, including rent collection software, so that everybody can switch over and it's not a great situation, I don't think, where all the tenants are going to have to basically sign on to a new software.
Have they been
relink their? Everyone's been paying by property management software with a different system.
And is that one of the bigger, more enterprise scale software?
It is.
Yeah, so it's not.
It's
not
one
really
that works well for property management company if they've got hundreds of units under management.
Right.
But for us, for just a 15 unit, that existing software doesn't make sense and it's not affordable.
Right.
So we've got other recommendations, and we can link to those below. And we've talked about all kinds of stuff before.
Have you decided which property management software you're going to go with?
Well, I use Tenant already, so I would like to roll this property into Tenant as well.
Right.
I understand it, but yes, we're going to get have to get all the tenants signed up. They're going to have to relink their bank accounts through Tenant, and
you'll get there.
All the new invoices and set up all the new leases and carrying over. They've got existing leases. But with the software, it's basically like setting up a new lease in the system so that all their information's there, the terms are in there. It associates with their tenancy and their rent payments and everything like that, all the invoices that go in and out.
I have to say that that's the part of property management software that I have the hardest time with, is managing the term, managing, having the right terms set up, a term being when it ends, basically. and then what the price is. And then when that changes, so at this point where you're bringing people in, it's work, it automates everything really nicely once you have everything set up again. But getting it set up is a bit of a pain. And then also, for me, renewals can be a little bit clunky where people, again, sometimes have to go in and set up new payments and they don't always do it on time. And so you're at that point where you got to get people to do stuff that.
Yeah. And it's, the tricky part is if it's being done a few months in advance, where they're currently paying current rents through one system, but hey, this thing is out there starting in, 3 months from now or 2 months from now, and you're going to have to set it up in advance, but not pay yet because you've already paid. It's all manageable, but I will imagine there's going to be some confusion and some, communications and hiccups along the way. But yeah, so that's sort of the, the rent side. Again, I'm going to have to get all the leases from the current property manager, and I assume that they'll be able to just download them from their existing software.
And they're being helpful, right? I mean, you've interviewed with them and you've chatted with some of their employees, and I've had that experience as well, where the outgoing property management company did a nice job of handing things off to me. Lesson learned for me was I didn't pay quite enough attention to all the systems that were in place, like who was maintaining the yard. Right. So like I dropped the ball on that. This was many years ago when I was, much less on top of things, of course, but I could
see that being an issue if you forget something or you're just not aware of something that's happening. And it just all of a sudden doesn't happen. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had upset people and I had to say, I'm sorry. And I made a mistake and then fix it. But,
so exactly. That's why I'm running through this exercise of trying to figure out all the different things that are happening that need to then roll over. And, whether that's with the same vendor, is it the same maintenance, the same landscaper, but things like fire extinguishers.
Yeah.
Like those got to get serviced every year. And it's the kind of thing like, who's doing it? And the property manager's like, one of those things that happens so infrequently that they don't know on the top of their head who's doing it, but they do it and it happens, but it's like they're gonna have to go in and try and figure out who all the different vendors currently are, and I hopefully with enough time where I can contact them and set up a new accounts with them if I want to continue with them, or if not, to go find new vendors, which I don't really want to do. I mean, I think by default we're gonna roll with the existing vendors whenever possible.
Yeah, right. All right, what else is kind of top of mind?
Just the transfer of accounts like utilities and, that kind of thing that will have to happen. Not a huge deal. And I imagine that will go pretty smoothly, but yeah.
Getting those set up as landlord accounts.
Right. Yep.
We've just run up against one account where we got notices that it was in collection, because some tenant had not paid, and it always comes down to the landlord. Right. You're still kind of always on the hook. And so having a landlord, I'm just inserting this little tidbit, that a landlord account with the utilities means that when somebody moves out or stops paying, then they come back to you and they say, hey, now you're on the hook.
You're now on the hook.
And you don't get a late payment down, a late notice down the road.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So that logistics, getting accounts set up.
Yeah. A lot of accounts, insurance, landlord insurance. And then for renters insurance policies, if they've got, I'll have to look into it. Maybe they've got the existing owners already on their policies, but maybe they have I don't know how those existing tenants set it up. So we'll have to go through those and ensure that the, owners are in fact the,
also insured.
Also named. Exactly.
Yeah. For those who don't know, that's just an acknowledgement, a formal acknowledgement on the part of the insurance company that your tenant has hired to provide insurance, their renter's insurance, which we absolutely advocate requiring renter's insurance. I didn't, and luckily I started doing it before anything happened, but I've had a couple of instances where it came in handy for tenants to have their own insurance, which covers any liability, anything they do to damage the property or somebody else, as well as protection for their own belongings. But it basically formally puts the owner or the property manager on the insurance policy as additionally covered by that policy, almost an additional beneficiary.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So,
And then so the donors are informed if anything changes or if it lapses or anything like that as well. Yeah. And then sort of the biggest one that's still in process for me that I'm trying to determine is the whole maintenance aspect of it all. Right. So in this case, at this particular building, it's not big enough to warrant its own full-time maintenance person. There's, from what I understand, maybe 2, 3, 4 calls a month of something happening, whether it's an emergency or just, a general repair that needs to happen where a maintenance guy needs to come and either work with an outside vendor if it's something larger like a plumber or electrician or whatever, or get some, do the work themselves. So this property is not big enough on its own to warrant a full-time person like that. But the property management company, right, could hire, to cover all of their different properties. They could hire one guy or 2 guys or whatever it was.
and they
Full
had,
time and just have them on call. And so they can, if something comes up, it's like, hey, go to this property and take care of this, or a different day, go to this other property. But so it works out great when you have enough scale to do something like that. But since we don't, it's, we go back to, we've talked about this before. So, one of the biggest kind of pain points for the landlords, independent landlords, is maintenance. And so it's like, we got to find, somebody who is willing to step in and take care of a lot of those issues. Not necessarily on call, but on a relatively short, quick notice sometimes.
right.
If something should come up. And again, we can't guarantee them a certain number of hours or a certain amount of work, or, we could maybe, that's an option, is to guarantee somebody, a certain number.
Kind of a
And I know that there
kind
are
of a
services.
a retainer type certain situation
Yeah.
where you're paying
Yeah.
a certain amount. Yeah.
Right. And so maybe it guarantees you, 2 calls per month or 3 visits per month or whatever. And I know that there's services out there, and we've talked about companies like this before, like Rental Riff, that does
They're
services
local
like this,
here.
so.
They're in started here and now they're based out of Oregon, but I used them at my Portland property, and it's worked great actually. And it ticks a lot of boxes. It kind of provides for somebody who is kind of committed to responding, and this doesn't have to be just with Rental Riff. This can be with a handy person or a contractor or somebody that you've established a relationship with, that, either through some kind of a retainer or just an agreement, that they're, to the extent possible, committed to take care of you and take care of your tenants. And Rental Riff will help to coordinate with, in fact, they're at my property in Portland right now, with the tenants, communicate with the tenants. And I still tend to get my fingers in there, and I'm trying to learn to step back and let them do their stuff, because it's better for me. But they have maintenance scheduled items like, furnace filters and that type of thing that they track and take care of, and that type of thing. But you can do the same thing with a handy person or somebody else. Another aspect of what Rental Riff does that's important, I know, Chris, you're dealing with this, is making sure that the people are properly vetted and insured and bonded and licensed and all that type of thing, because it's important, especially where, you're not the owner. So, hiring somebody who is going to provide coverage if something goes wrong, protects your client, the owner, and takes you off the hook as well.
Exactly. And and it just, it establishes that kind of baseline of trust, with the handy person and with the tenants themselves. If they can see the same guy coming every time, then
Right.
they're probably, more comfortable with that person coming to, when
They're
you
able to
come
let
knock
somebody
on
in
their doors.
their home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
So,
and and I know that there are some tenants out there that really have trouble with this. In fact, I think there's a tenant on this property that, has taken years to get comfortable with the current handyman. And now that they will allow them, to come, but before it was like, who are you again? I don't, I need you to provide some sort of identification or proof or whatever,
Right.
even though it may have been them that called the handyman to begin with. But
yeah.
there just can be some issues like that. So I think having somebody who is kind of the regular guy or the regular gal that comes would
Right.
be perfect.
Yeah.
So, and we recently had Nate Smoyer of Lulu on the podcast, and Lulu does the same thing. Unfortunately, they're not here in Seattle yet,
Mhm.
but yeah, they do the same thing, and I think it's also a great service
It's a
and
little different model, though. I mean, I think it's a little bit larger scale, and
larger
it's
scale.
also a network of vendors who they have a whole vetting process for. I think they do background checks and they check on the
Right.
licensing and all that type of thing, and make sure that everybody's appropriately licensed and bonded and insured. Whereas Rental Rip has kind of what they call a property specialist. So those are local people who can do at least some repair work, but also are, to be honest, they have to be personable enough to be like, to let somebody in for, to see a place if you need that, and they can be flexible to do those types of things. So it's a little bit more of a individual relationship versus kind of a network.
Right. It feels like it's more of that type of retainer type situation that you were talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah. Maintenance. I think that's your biggest one, right? That's your biggest,
That's the biggest one. I think that's the biggest one for me that feels like the biggest unknown or,
yeah.
potential struggle. I mean, I think there's the communications and the relationship aspects with each of the tenants also feels like a big one, just kind of getting in, introducing myself and making sure everybody understands the process and how things are going to work and
Right.
has some comfort in that. But I think that'll be a big one, but it feels like that's something that's manageable, much more manageable than maintenance for some reason. But
Well, and it's reasonable to take it very seriously, because if you're the person who's kind of on call, it makes a big difference if you have a resource available to you that you've already lined up versus not.
exactly.
Yeah, because
Right.
you can find yourself kind of scrambling.
Yeah, it makes all the relationships go that much easier, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've talked about kind of the bookkeeping, the
Mhm.
documentation side, and maintenance. Um,
There
w-
actually is a whole different aspect of bookkeeping that we haven't really gotten into that,
okay, yeah,
the previous property management company was providing, pretty detailed spreadsheets and records and everything like that. And,
reporting
um,
for property management
yeah,
software, probably,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
So it's going to be a matter of using Turbo Tenant now, if I'm doing it that way,
yeah,
of kind of figuring out what is necessary and what Turbo Tenant's reporting systems can do and how those are presented. And, the owners might get something slightly different looking
hmm
in terms of the final reports. So there's going to be some work and some tweaking in that aspect to try and give the same level of reporting that they were currently used to.
right. So uh, that brings something to mind to point out, is that TurboTen actually also partners with Lula, so you can integrate Lula into TurboTen,
Yeah,
or you can opt into Lula through TurboTen. Of course, they're not
if
here
they are in the market.
they're not in
Yeah.
the market currently, but they have a similar partnership with an accounting third party software tool, which is called REI Hub, and you can opt into that. And each of those comes with this kind of a la carte costs. But
Yeah.
are you going to go that route with the accounting there, or are you going to do?
I think probably so. I think so. Because otherwise, I don't think you get the same level of granularity and the same level of detail that you might with just the standard Turbo Tenant reporting
Right.
tools. So I think we will go there to begin with, because I think that's kind of what the owners are expecting in terms of what they need to see.
And just to back up, what REI Hub does, and there are other property management software platforms, or they come at it from different angles, but there are various different products out there, and we've written about lots of them. Stessa is another one, for example, that kind of focuses on the accounting piece of it. But what REI Hub will do is essentially provide you with accounting software. So the advantage there over I'm at a loss for what's your QuickBooks. The
Yeah.
advantage there for QuickBooks is that your tenant pays their rent through Turbo Tenant. It automatically gets logged as an income entry in REI Hub. And what it does that Turbo Tenant standalone doesn't do is also allow you to download transactions from bank accounts or credit cards. So then you can pull your expenses in without necessarily having to manually log.
Manually enter all the different expenses and categorize them, on your own into, whether it's maintenance services or landscaping or whatever.
Utilities
yeah.
yeah. And they're set up to recognize transactions as commonly used real estate, rental property categories. So QuickBooks is, you have to set things all up and tell QuickBooks what the categories are and
Right. 'Cause QuickBooks was organized, was created to handle all kinds of businesses, not
any
just,
kind of business.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So it's got things for everything that you can think of,
Right.
most of which are not relevant to you.
Right. Which is mind-boggling for the likes of me. I mean, that type of thing. I've tried with QuickBooks in the past and have given up. It's just too steep a learning curve. So what these products are meant to do is to be kind of dialed off. I'm sure there's a little bit of manual entry, especially if you pay cash for something. You're still going to have to keep that receipt and remember to document it. But it's meant to be kind of established, a setup for the purposes of rental property.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear about that one. I have not. This is an area that actually neither of us has really dealt in person.
Yeah, it's sort of new. The scope of it will be a little bit different than what I'm accustomed to. But so yeah, be a learning curve.
You got to get the property taxes sent to, although it's probably being sent to the escrow if there's an escrow account.
In this case, there won't be, but
yeah. So then
the property manager was handling that before. So now, that'll be.
You got to get that.
Yeah.
And what all services do you have there? Do you have yard maintenance?
Yeah, landscaping.
Do you have do you provide cable and phone or Wi-Fi services?
That's a good question. I'll need to look into that. I don't believe
you probably don't, but
are providing that, but not in this building.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like fire extinguishers, like we talked about, pest remediation, just kind of general around the property.
And then just getting to know the individual needs of a property. Like, does that gutter have a leaf or a branch hanging over it? That means it's got to be cleaned every year. So it takes some time to get to know a property.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I'm still learning about certain things in other properties that I've been working at for years. Yeah, it's just new stuff. But
anything else we ought to chat about?
No, not really. Other than just as we've gone through, just thinking about all the things that need to happen. And I think for me, I'm the kind of person that wants to have that thought out and kind of planned in advance before actually turning it over and then letting all the complaints come, I guess is what
which is maybe more my approach, but it used to be. But I've learned it's better to be on top of it.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Well, thanks for watching or listening. Again, we're the Landlord Gurus. That's Chris and I'm Eli. And we would love it if you would click follow or subscribe and keep coming back and share with anybody else that you think that might be interested in these topics. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.